This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so let's start with a couple of questions. Anyone, any questions from yesterday's session? Again, we were discussing on the tenant and then the subscription. Then we were talking about user management yesterday. We were telling how do you create a user, how do you add a user into your Azure account, and then we were talking about something called as role-based access control (RBACs), when we were telling that you can do something called as an owner or a contributor or a reader role, depending upon which the user whom you add will get the permissions accordingly. An owner is like an administrator, and then a contributor can do everything an owner can do apart from, let's say, user management. And then we said there's someone known as a reader. Again, we'll revise the same thing out here today. But yes, before I get started, anyone, any questions, any confusions or something like that? Anyone, any questions
Kiran,
till here? Hmm.
yesterday you told that you will be receiving user's password through email.
Correct.
But for which mail will be receiving? I didn't receive anything.
I'm sorry. Can you please come again?
Yesterday even I tried creating user.
Okay.
So when I gave the email ID, but I didn't receive any password to
When you
mail.
say you have, yeah, when you say you have given the email ID, which
Yes,
exact email ID that you have given? Like, was it a Gmail account, or how did you, let's say, go ahead and create this out?
I created fake ID, Gmail ID.
Okay.
Uh,
So
there
you
I
created,
mentioned that.
yes. So you created an email ID and you went into the users and you said
Yes,
new user and you said invite an external user. Is it?
no,
Did you
create
create?
user.
No, if you create a user, it's not Gmail. It's on Microsoft.com is what you get.
Okay.
It's
So
on
here your
Microsoft.
password is given.
Yes. Here, if you give a password, that user, for example, let's say your domain is not on Microsoft.com. Let's say your domain is at the rate tata.com or at the rate tatamotors.com, whatever it is. And that tata.com or tatamotors.com should have configured their own Outlook. That's where the email will be sent. Apart from, I mean, if you do not have the email configured, if you do not have your inbox configured, you will not receive an email out here as such.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry. I am create a user. I will also talk about what is inviting a user. Yes. Not sub users or main users. There are different ways to create a user. One is creating a user, and the second is inviting a user. We are seeing creating a user. We'll also see how do you invite a user or something like that. Yes, we are doing create a user right now. Yes, yes. Any questions? Any more questions that I can take? Okay, and
Hi sir, Madhu here.
yeah, Madhu, go ahead, please.
Actually, coming to permissions,
Okay,
as admin, if he is given some administrative permissions, sorry, owner permissions to some other personality like admin too, for example, if suppose.
okay,
If these two guys are trying to log in into the Azure tenant at the same time, suppose if these two
okay,
guys are working parallelly,
okay.
so does they use the same credentials to log into the Azure tenant or with a different like admin one, admin two like that? Is there
It'll
anything
be different. It'll be a
different? Yeah?
different credentials. Yes, admin one, admin two. Each and every user will have their own credentials. Each and every
Not
user
user,
will have their.
admin. I'm talking about the.
That's fine. Even admin is a user, right? Admin is
Okay,
nothing
okay,
but a
okay.
user.
Ah,
So
okay, got it.
I think Madhu,
Okay.
you had a question, right? I think
Yeah,
you
yes, yes,
sent me an email across.
yes, yes. Sir. Mm.
Yes. So
While creating user, I got a error like creating a user one. I'm trying to create the user one, but it's
correct.
saying that.
So okay.
Mm,
So you said okay, fine. So let me let's say try to redo the same thing out here to generate that particular error. So let's
mhm.
say I am trying to create a user. Okay. Again, this account is something that I did not create. this account
Mm-hmm.
automatically got created when I created the tenant. Same case
Mm-hmm.
in your case when you were sending the email across, you had one
Mm-hmm.
account and you say that you're not able to delete that account, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will
Why
not
I'm
be
trying
able
to
to
delete the Why
yes,
I'm trying to delete the account means
mhm,
my default director name is Manyam Madhu, but by
correct,
automatically the user blade one user name is called by default it's created like Manyam Madhu only. So
definitely. And the same user, yes, the same user login you're using to log in into Azure, isn't it?
if
You're
I'm trying to
doing
create a new username, it's telling that it's creating the user one. That is the problem.
correct,
Mm-hmm.
correct. But yes, so you're doing this one. So you said create a new user, and let's say I do a demo user one. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the name is different. I'll say this is demo. I'll say this is user one, and I'll just scroll down. I'll say let me create a password. I'll just go ahead and I'll say give a password out here. I'll just scroll down and I'll say create this out. So it said creating a user. This is what it's saying for you as well. Creating a user called demo,
Mm-hmm.
and it just gave me a green tick right now. And if I just refresh this out, I now I'm able to see a demo user out here, right? This is
Okay.
demo one. So
Mm.
what is the error that you're getting here while you're trying to create something? When you say you're
I-
getting an
I've
error, what? Mhm.
I've shared the screenshot also after the session. Can you please resolve this?
Correct, but I was going through the screenshots, but I don't
Hmm.
see the error while you are creating the users as such. That's what I was
I've
responding back in the morning.
just now
Out of
I've shared the screenshot
okay,
also.
okay, so you share a screenshot. Okay, fine. So it is unable to create the user. So the very first question out here is that what is the password that you're giving while you're creating this particular user out here? And also, can you try with a different username? And if you are, let's say, going ahead and creating something, some a user like that,
Mm-hmm.
can you go ahead and create something like this? Say instead of user one, go for demo user one. Give
Okay.
your password as Microsoft hyphen 001, capital M
Microsoft iPhone 001.
00. And I put this in the chat window also. So can you please try this out?
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you. That's my end. That's
okay.
good.
And I see cameras on. Please go offline. Yes, thank you. So let's say, okay, Rahul Singh, I missed the first 5 minutes, not able to hear it. Okay, I'll just redo it. Not a problem. Audio is not available. I would say, please drop off and rejoin in. It sometimes can be an issue at your end. Let's see again. Good morning, sir. Okay, fine. I created an account in portaltreasure.com using my Gmail ID. I am getting the below error, which is something like this: experiencing authentication. Yes. Swati, for this particular error, you first have to create a subscription under your tenant. And once you create a subscription under your tenant, go to your Active Directory and you should not be able to see this error anymore. It's because you do not have a subscription under your Active Directory tenant out here as such. So once you do that, you should be able to, let's say, get through that as such. When I'm going to create a subscription, it's asking for organization. It's a blank field. It's a dummy field. You can give any organization name out here. You do not really have to, let's say, create or do not really have to, let's say, give a genuine organization name as such. You can, let's say, give any organization, like you can give Microsoft or whatever it is, not a problem. It shouldn't, let's say, cause any issues out there. Again, it's going to ask you your PAN as well. You do not even have to give your PAN. It's optional in nature. Only the fields which are mandatory, just fill them up and you can create one, let's say you'll be using your credit card and all these things up here as such. Yes, any more questions here? Anyone, any more questions here? So I'll just delete this one. Let's come back once again. So I'll just delete this out. All right, so user deleted successfully. Great. So this is where I am, wherein I have a tenant, I have a subscription. I want to go ahead and add a user. And in order to add a user, if I go into my portal.azure.com, I firstly need to, yesterday as I was discussing, we firstly need to go into something called as Azure Active Directory. This is the place where all the users who are eligible to sign in should be created. Same way, I am using an ID called classes@gmail.com. I am a user in my Active Directory tenant Only because of this, I'm able to go ahead and let's say log in out here. Now I cannot delete my own self. If I say delete user, right, it will simply kick me out. I cannot really delete my own self out here. It's a conflict basically that I do get. Now I'll just go ahead, create a new user. And when I click on new user, there are two ways in which you can create a user. One is called create a user, second is called invite a user. Till now we've been looking at create a user. We'll revise that once. Then we'll also see what do you mean by inviting a user? What exactly is inviting a user out there, etc. So I'll say create a user. It says, okay, fine, create a user in your organization, meaning your tenant name is called tata.com. In my case, the primary domain name looks something like this, gmail or dot on microsoft.com out here. As I was telling, let's say in the very first class, is that you can change this id. You can change it to, let's say, @tata.com or @microsoft.com or whatever it is, whatever tenant that you have. So what I'll do, I'll say, okay, fine, this is good enough, and I'll say this is demo one. This is the name of the user today that I'm creating. I'll say this is demo one. I'll scroll down and I'll say let me create a password instead of auto generating this out. And I'll just go ahead and give a password out here. And okay, I'll scroll down. Job title, usage location, everything you do not really need this out. Let's create this out here. Now it says successfully created the user called demo one. Again, it won't reflect here. You just have to do a quick refresh here. And once you do that refresh, you now have a user with the name called what? Demo one. So this is the user whom I added at my tenant. This is where I added the user out here at the tenant level. So if I just click on that particular user again, if I just go here, click on that particular user as such, click on this user, once I get into it, this user will have something called as a principal name and also something called as the object ID. Each and every user that you have in your Azure portal will be tracked by Azure using this particular object ID. This is for Azure to understand what is the object ID of the user. Just like you have a subscription ID, just like you have a tenant ID. For Azure to track all these things out, you have something called as object ID out here. Which one? The object ID and tenant ID are very different with each other. Object is nothing but users inside your tenant. So tenant is the main parent. This will have its own ID. Tenant will have its own ID out here. So if you look at that, my tenant ID, if I just go back, my tenant ID is 27DE, something like this, under which each and every subscription will have its own ID. We call them as a subscription ID out here. Everything or anything that you create inside a tenant, which is nothing but the Azure Active Directory, we call them as objects. Object. This is an object of a type called user. You're just creating a user. I'm a person, you're creating a user. So this user will have his own ID, his or her own ID, known as the object ID out here as such. And this is the principal name, meaning instead of demo at the rate something dot on microsoft.com, I will have here as, let's say, demo at the rate demo one at com or microsoft.com or cognizant.com or tcs.com, whatever it is. So I'll just copy this ID. I will go into an incognito window because my login will, let's say, impact right now. So I'll just go into an incognito window. I'll say portal.azure.com. I'll go into something called portal.azure.com out here. I'll paste the entire ID, which is demo one at the rate something dot on microsoft.com and so on and so forth. I'll say next. And once I say next, here it's going to ask me for the password, which I would have received if I would have configured an email for this one. For now, I'll just go ahead and type in the password. Once I type in the password, it's asking me to update the password out here. The very first step, update the password. So I will say this some update out here. And once I update the password out here, the next step is going to ask me help you protect your account and all that stuff. I'll just skip this for 14 days. And I am now into the Azure portal. as demo one user out here. This is something that I've logged in. Again, if I go back into my main screen, this is my administrator account, which is classes@gmail.com. This is the account that I don't share with anyone. This is the account for me. One account for one person out here as such. And this is the account that you have now got. Whenever you join my project or whenever you join my organization, this is the account that you got. But again, the issue here is that if you go into something called as subscriptions, you will not be able to see any subscriptions. Yes. Reason being, the user has been added to the tenant, but there is no role assignment on the subscription at all. You have not granted the user any kind of a role. You have to do two things. One, the user has to be added into the tenant. Second, the user also has to be granted a role from the available list of roles out here. Again, I as an administrator, I have the power to add the role. So what I can do is come down to my home screen, and here I find my subscription, or you can click on subscriptions out here. Inside the subscription, this is called Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. In your case, it can be a free trial subscription out here. I click on this one, and under the blades of subscription, I see something called as access control in brackets IAM, identity and access management. I go here, and then I say add, and then I say add role assignment out here. And as and when I do a role assignment, it's now going to ask me what kind of a role do you really want out here. Now, is it an owner? And if it's an owner, it will also tell you what kind of, let's say, access you will get. It's telling grants full access to manage all the resources, including the ability to assign roles in Azure RBAC. Contributor grants full access to manage resources, but does not let you allow manage what? RBAC out here. I'll say, okay, fine, this is what I want, contributor. I'll say next. Now it's telling, okay, fine, the role is contributor. Whom do you want to assign this to? Is it a user group or a service principal? We'll talk about what service principals are. I'll say, yes, it's a user. And the user is called demo one. This is the user that I want to add. And I'll say select. Again, this message is optional. Don't have to really give a message out here. I'll just say review and assign this out. And in the final page, it's asking me, okay, fine. This is the role that you want to give, contributor, and you want to give this role on a subscription with the ID called C5, something like this. Same ID as my subscription. So if I just go into my subscription out here, this is the same ID that I see out here as such. C56C. It's telling yes, this is a subscription with this particular ID. And on this particular subscription, you're giving a role to someone called as demo user or demo one, whose object ID is something like this. C29 something like this, which is different from my subscription ID completely. Are you good with this? I'll say yes, I'm good with this. I'll review and assign this out. So I'm now doing a assignment, which is now called as a role assignment, and I'm giving one specific role to this particular user called as a contributor. I'm adding this user as a contributor right now, and it's now added. If I go into the other tab wherein I'm logged in as the demo user one, I'll refresh the screen a couple of times. I'll say skip this one until 14 days. I'll say no. Now I'm able to see a subscription now as the same user called demo one. And my question to everyone is, please observe this. Am I seeing a different subscription or is it the same subscription ID? Same subscription ID, which means me as a demo one user and the administrator as classes Azure DevOps, we both are sharing the same subscription out here. And we both are logging into the same subscription, but with different IDs. With different IDs, we are going ahead and logging in out here. And if I come here into the Visual Studio Enterprise subscription as a demo user, I'm into the subscription right now. In the left hand side, do you see identity and access management? Now what I want to do is that as a demo one user, I want to add someone else. I'll just go here And as the administrator did, I can click on add, but do you see what is happening here? Disabled. Why is it disabled? Access, because this user called demo1 is a contributor. He's not an owner. As a contributor, exactly, you will have all the access apart from adding a user. So even though this user comes here, clicks something like this, nothing is going to really happen out here. So again, if nothing is happening, then I'm a little interested to check what is my role. What exactly is my role? Do you see a button called view my access? I can click on this view my access, and this will now tell me that I am a contributor on this resource. It's telling scope is this resource. When it says scope out here, nothing but it's talking about the subscription out here. It's telling at a subscription level, you are someone called as what? Contributor. And as a contributor, Azure also tells you this one. As a contributor, grants full access managers but does not allow you to assign roles in Azure RBAC. So no matter what you do, you cannot assign roles out here. This is what you kind of get out here when you are as a contributor as such out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone? Any questions still here? Again, this topic is a little confusing because I'm doing multiple windows out here. Yes. Demo one is not the end user part. Demo one is you as an employee who's logging in back again. Yes, as in like you can say an end user. Yes, you can say that. Yes, you are an end user out there for us. Yes. Any more questions here? Anyone? Any questions that I can take till here? Okay, so this is creating a user that I went ahead. I created someone known as a user out here. What if you don't want to create a user? Let's go back into the tenant. And now I'm telling I don't want to create a user. Probably I am Microsoft. Okay, I am a company called Microsoft. I have my own employees. I have a lot of employees who work for me under something called as Microsoft out here. Also, for my project, there are a couple of contractors who are working, like from external companies. Like let's say they already are a part of a company called TCS and they want to work for Microsoft out here. So I don't want to create a Microsoft ID for them. If I don't want to create a Microsoft ID for them, I won't say create a user. In here, I would say invite a user. This is user invitation. So you can create a user, or if you see, invite a new user to collaborate with your organization. The user will be initiated to the email and all that stuff to collaborate and all these things. So I'll say, okay, fine, I want to invite a user, and I will say the user name is something like demo2, demo2 out here. And I have a Gmail account which is called RBAC contributor, something like this, at the rate gmail.com. Now, in place of gmail.com, you can substitute with this, let's say any external company like tcs.com or something. Microsoft is trying to invite them. And I'll say this is last name and all you don't really need. I'll say invite this out. Now, what I'm doing is I'm not creating a user, I'm inviting a user right now. And it says user is successfully invited. And once you refresh this out a couple of times, you should be able to see a user with someone called as demo2 out here that gets created. Let's refresh this out. It's still demo1. It requires some time to, let's say, go ahead and let's say add this particular user out here. Okay. So what I'll do right now is let me go into that Gmail account. Let me say Gmail login, and I'll log in as that particular user called RBAC contributor. Once I logged in, The first email, do you see, came in at around 7:26 just now? It's telling classes Azure DevOps invited you to collaborate with your application. This is how you will receive an email at your end telling that, okay, fine, you know what, the Azure account is asking you to collaborate with them. Do you want to accept their invitation? I'll say, yes, I want to accept their invitation. And when I accept the invitation, I will not get a password. Rather, I will have to create let's say an Outlook account, and that will be my password out here. When you create a user, you create a password for him and give it to him. But when you're inviting a user, you're not creating a password for him because he's an external domain. You do not have a control on what is a password out here. In here, since this is already an account, I'm just giving the password and say signed in. No, I'll just go log in out here and etc. And the first thing it's telling, are you okay? These are all the permissions that is required. Do you accept the terms and conditions? I'll say yes, I'll accept the terms and conditions. And once I accept the terms and conditions, I am getting logged into to the same tenant, which is 27D, something like this. Again, yes, I'll just do portal.azure.com again. And again, same issue. I don't have a subscription. I shouldn't have a subscription. Reason being, I as a or I as, let's say, an external user was just added to the tenant. There is no role assignment whatsoever that I had on the subscription. Again, as my admin account, I will have to go into my subscription. I will have to, let's say access control out here. I'll say add, I'll say role assignment out here. And in here, I'll give a contributor or a reader or whatever role that user needs. I'll say add members. And in here, I'll just search for a member called demo2, which is rbac contributor at the gmail.com. Select this out and I'll say review and assign. Again, if you see, I'm assigning a role called contributor on a subscription with the ID called C5 something. Demo user has again a different object ID. Each and every user will have a different object ID of his own. Let's say review and assign this out. Now I have added a role to the demo user out here, which is demo2. Again, as this particular demo2, you will have to wait for about 2 or 3 minutes for this to get reflected. Sometimes you have to log out and log in back again. It's again telling no subscriptions and etc. It needs some time to get reflected. So if you take like about 2 or 3 minutes of time, refresh this out, you'll also be able to see a subscription underneath this particular, let's say, account out here as such. Now I'm able to see the subscription. If I click on this particular subscription and if I say identity and access management, again same issue, I will not be able to add someone else because I'm a contributor. If I say view my access, same thing, contributor on this resource, which is what, subscription out here. I am a, let's say, contributor on this particular resource called as a subscription as such out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? So that's the difference between inviting a user versus creating a user. So you invite a user if you do not want to, let's say, go ahead and create him under your tenant. You can send across an email to an external user, have him collaborate with your organization. Example, you are Microsoft, you have a contracting employee, you don't want to add him, you can call him under your organization using that invite user button out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here that I can take? Anyone, anything till here that I can take? Again, one question that people can have is that, is it not a tedious procedure, whenever someone joins, you have to create them, assign role to, let's say, subscriptions, and all this something that I'm doing manually. And let's say if I'm talking about a very big organization, wherein let's say I'm talking about an organization called Microsoft, wherein 10,000s of employees, let's say, join at a given point in time, then how do I do it for each and every one? Should I go each and every button and then click on each? No, I won't do that. As yes, it should do automatically. Or what you can do, is that if I go into something called Azure Active Directory, if I go into users, I have an option called bulk operations. Bulk, I can go and create users. So I'll say bulk operations, bulk create or bulk invite. Let's say if I want to do a bulk create, it's telling, okay, fine, you know what? You will be able to download, or it's asking you to download something known as a CSV template, comma separated value template. So I'll just download this out. It's now telling user create template.csv. It's an Excel file. And once I open this out, I'll say yes, open with Excel. It's now telling that, you know what, these are the fields that you need to, let's say, create, which is username, or which is the name of the user, username, the initial password, and a lot of things out here like office and all that stuff. These are the three main fields. You can fill up everything. You can fill up whatever users that you need. Let's say either programmatically or manually, you can fill up all these things out here. Finally, once you fill it up, you can upload the file once again. Whichever file that you downloaded, you can upload this file once again. And yes, it's not valid because I did not, let's say, submit all these things out. Once you put everything out here and say upload, it's saying, okay, fine, it's valid and etc. Once you hit the submit button, you'll just go ahead and create all the users at one go out here. And what we do, one more thing what we do out here is this. We just don't create the users the way they are. Rather, we create something called as user groups, called groups out here. Let's say I create a new group and I say this is a security group, and I'll say the group name is sample group 1. I'll say the description here is that I'll say this is an AD group. I'll say create. So I now have a group called sample group 1. Again, it will take some time to get this particular thing reflected. It's telling I have created something called sample group 1 out here. So I'll just, let's say, go ahead and refresh this a couple of times for this to get reflected. And once I have the sample group 1, what I can do right now is I can go into my subscription, into the subscription level, into the identity and access management, and say add role assignment. If I do a contributor, instead of a user, I can give a group a particular access. I'll see select members, and I'll say it is sample. Just type in sample. I have what? Sample group 1. I'll say select. I'll say review and assign. So now I am giving a group a particular access out here called contributor. And now if you are adding a user called someone like sample user, say the name is sample user or demo 3 or something like that to maintain consistency. Let's say let me create this out. Now it's telling groups. Does this user has to be a part of any group? I'll say yes. This user has to be a part of something called a sample group, and then I'll say create. What this is going to do is that when that user falls in the group, whatever permissions the group has, the user will also get the same thing. Automatically it'll get reflected. So you do not have to, let's say, go ahead and go to the individual user and do something known as IAM. This will also have one more advantage. If you do a bulk operation, say bulk create, and if you look at the template, right, in this template, you'll also have an option to give where is the group or which is the group that you want to create this user into. You can have multiple users, multiple groups. You can put everything here, upload the template back again. Azure will go ahead and take care to create everything, assign them everything to the groups. And now you have groups, permissions are already assigned to the group. You don't have to really do anything. As and when the user is created inside the group, the user will automatically take the permission. The user is automatically going to take that particular permission out here as such. Yes. Any questions still here? Anyone? Any questions still here that I can take? Okay. Yes, if the user is not in the group, if the user is already in the group, makes no point in adding the user back again into the group out here. So if the user is not in the group, yes, only then you will be able to add the user inside the group. Second scenario, yes. Yes, any more questions here?
Kiran, can you hear me?
Just a second. Yes, I
Hello.
can hear you. Good, please. I can
Yeah.
hear you.
So
Sir,
as you said,
yeah.
hello.
Okay. Yes.
So if we are
Yes. Go
adding
ahead,
any
please.
users into the CSV file, okay,
Okay.
after creating a group, so do we need to again create something for them into group, or we have to add them again, or directly it will
Uh,
take from the CSV file the permissions and all these things?
okay. Just give me a second. My audio is not that great. Just a second. I'll just switch into my speakers. Okay. Can you go now, please? I'll take the question. I'll reiterate it. Can you go
Suppose,
now,
for
please?
example, in CSV file we have added 10 users, okay,
Okay.
and we have created a group.
Okay.
So if we want to add a 11th user, directly we can
Okay.
add it to CSV file. So it will
Okay.
automatically get created, or again we have to create the users for them and then we have to add them into the group.
No. So the question here is that I created 10 users using this particular CSV file. There are 10 rows. Uploaded that
Mhm,
file. Azure created all those 10 users. Now the 11th
mhm.
user is coming. Then you'll have to put that 11th user again inside this particular file and re-upload it back again.
Okay,
Reason
that's
being,
what. Again,
yes,
please.
yes, you'll have to upload it back again so that Azure won't create the first 10. Azure will now only create the 11th user, add him inside the group, and give him the permission.
Okay, so we have to re-upload all the time. Whenever we are adding any new user into the
Yes,
CSV file, we have to re-upload and create it, right?
yes, we will have to re-upload it. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just come 1 second. I'll just take some questions that are there in the chat window. Let's see. So, okay. When I'm going to create a subscription, asking for the organization, okay, fine. After taking subscription only, I'll be able to see my tenant ID. Yes, after taking subscription only, you'll be able to see the tenant ID. How to create a domain and link it? Firstly, you cannot create a domain. You'll have to buy a domain. You cannot create a domain. You have to, let's say, buy a domain. And once you buy a domain, then you can go ahead and, let's say, link this out. Again, there is something called as a domain register. There is something called DNS names and all these things, which are the concepts which are going to see in the coming sessions. What is DNS and all these things out here. At present, if I have access to my Azure Active Directory, it's showing no access. Will that resolve after taking subscription? Yes, it will resolve after taking subscription. Getting confused from which window we have to switch. Again, you're only getting confused because I am showing all the users in one screen. Yes, you're bound to get confused. That's the reason I'm doing, let's say, demo user. Whenever I'm going somewhere, I'm telling this is the demo user out here. Whenever I'm coming here, I'm saying this is the admin user. So this is something that you have to follow. Yes. Any more questions here? Anyone? Any more questions here? Yes. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Kiran, sorry to
Just a
disturb.
second. Sorry. Rahul, just a
Hello.
second. Yeah, I'm just taking a question offline. I'll come back to you. Just a second. Yes, go ahead, please. hmm Yes, create user and invite user. Yes. Okay. 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 Good question. Is that before I give a permission, is there any SOP that is followed? Is there any documentation? Yes. There should be a standard operating procedure that I need to follow. I need to tell if what kind of a user he is. Does he belong to a development team? Does he belong to a QA team? Or which kind of a team he belongs to? Depending upon the team he belongs to, depending upon the job role, job nature, the permissions will be assigned accordingly. Again, you can also go ahead and create your own set of permissions. In Azure, there is something called custom roles. There's something called built-in roles. All we are doing is a built-in role. There is also something known as a custom role, where you can go ahead create your own set of permissions, assign it to your users if your built-in role is not working for you. Yes, Rahul, you had a question online. I can take it now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so a small doubt I have, we are using this app.diagram.net. I'm not able to find out. So how we are going to switch on this?
Sorry, if the user is sorry, just a second.
Uh,
Just getting a little disturbance at your end. Just a second. Yeah, can you please go now?
we are using one that is app.diagram.net.
Mm-hmm. This one. Okay.
So I'm not able to find that on my system. Yeah, this one.
No, it's draw.io. It's called draw.io. This will internally take you to one other link called app.diagram.net.
So it is not linked with its portal.azure.com, right?
No, not at
This
all.
is the
This
separate
is a
window we have
separate,
to open.
yeah, this is a separate window that I'm using to explain, let's say diagrammatically.
Okay, can you please let me know again what is that portal?
It is draw.io, input and output. DROW, draw.io.
Thank you.
Right. Yes. Any more
Sir,
questions, guys? Go ahead, please.
sir, is my voice audible, sir? Hello?
Yes, your voice is audible, Ravi. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Sir, one of the student have asked a question that if
Mm-hmm.
there are 10 users, if you want to
Okay.
add a 11th user, you
Okay.
you told that 11th user has to be added to the Excel sheet once again and it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
uploaded again. So
Correct.
apart from that, you have also told that we can add that user to the group by clicking on AIM or MI. I'm not sure about that. So
Correct. Mm-hmm.
is it also possible that instead of adding the 11th user to the Excel sheet, can
Mm-hmm.
we add him with help of Azure portal to that group?
Yes. So is it mandatory to add a user directly to the group? No, not really. It's not really mandatory out here. You can
No,
add the
no. My
11th user
question is
directly.
another.
Hmm.
No, that's what. Instead of adding it to the Excel sheet, is it
Mm-hmm.
possible to add the 11th user via portal? I mean, using the Azure
Yes.
portal
Yes, it is possible to add the 11th user using the Azure portal. Yes, you can do that.
directly directly to the group.
Correct. Directly to the group so that he will be able to
So
have a
can you
direct
please,
access. Sorry?
if you don't mind, can you please show me that
Sure.
how to add that?
So this is the 11th user. Let's say this is demo user 11. So I'm creating the
Okay.
new user. I'll say this is demo user 11. I'll say this is demo 11. I'll just scroll down. I'll say let me create this out. This is all common. And if you see this, you have something called groups and roles. Here I'll select a group called sample group 1. Select and I'll say create this out. So now if you see user created successfully also added the user to the group successfully out here. Both the things happen.
So by default, it was added to the group.
Correct, because I selected it here, right? Because I selected which group the user needs to be added while I created the user.
Okay. So that actual sheet will work out in the case of a bulk.
Bulk
If we
operations,
are
correct.
if you're adding a bulk number of users. Okay. So if one or two additional users are coming in, so we can go with the help of Azure portal.
Correct. If one or two users are there, you can use
Is
the
it
Azure
correct?
portal to add. Yes,
Yeah. So if there are another 20, 25, it's better to upload via Excel sheet template.
correct, correct.
Yes, sir. I have one more question, sir. So
Hmm.
you just explained that so we can add users to the subscription either with the help
Hmm.
of external assignment or with the help of Azure portal. So you
Okay.
told that if an external user had to add to the subscription, so we
Hmm.
have to add his mail so that he get a mail and he will access the subscription via the mail.
Yes,
So
correct.
if the administrator is adding the user via the Azure portal, so how can
Hmm.
he knows that? I mean, how can he the other user can access the Azure portal or the subscription part of the tenant ID? So that does he also get an email ID?
He doesn't get an email ID. He already has an email ID. He doesn't really get one.
So,
He already has one. Mhm.
so yeah, it means that first of all, the user has to create a subscription in the Azure portal. So whatever
Not
the
really.
email that he subscribed with, okay.
Not really. He doesn't needs to have a subscription in the Azure portal. As I said, see, as I see, this is rbsc@gmail.com. This guy never had
Yeah.
a subscription on the Azure portal at all. He's just using
Okay.
my subscription. Same subscription again.
Okay.
This is the only
Okay.
subscription which he is having access to. C5 and etc. So
Okay.
all he got is an email. He can just click on this accept invitation, and then you'll have, let's say, a portal telling that okay, fine, log in to, let's say, Microsoft. Once you log in, it'll tell accept all these things there. Once you accept, you are coming back into my tenant only. This is
Okay.
the
It
same
means
tenant
that
ID that I'm using.
whatever the email that you are adding to the portal, so he gonna get a email to that email ID.
Okay.
Is it correct?
Yes, correct. That's correct. I
I
mean,
mean,
whatever email that.
while adding while adding the user, you're going to add an email ID. So he's going to get
Mhm.
the mail to the particular email ID. So by clicking on
Correct.
that, so he will be added to the subscription.
Correct.
So it will be same as in the case of external user.
Yes, yes, correct. It'll be same as in the
Okay.
case of, I mean,
So
this is an external use. Yes. Good,
even
please.
for the user that was created by the administrator, the process is the same. You're going to get an
Even for
email
the user it is created by
via
the
his email.
administrative process is I mean, it is similar. I wouldn't say same, but when you create a user, you get to choose what is the password of that particular user, the initial password of that particular user.
Yeah,
But when you go ahead and, let's say, add a user,
of course. Once
an
the
external user,
administrator,
you don't give an email. Yes. Go ahead, please.
oh no, that once the administrator has added a user, once the
Hmm.
administrator has added a user, he's going to get an email to his email ID. So by clicking on that, he can have an access to the subscription of the Azure tenant. So for that,
Correct.
he has to create a password.
For that, he
So it
has to
is
create a password. Mhm.
yeah, it is almost same in the case of both external user as well as the user created by the administrator.
User created by the administrator will create the initial password. There is a small difference there. Administrator will create the initial password out here, but external user,
Okay, then
yes.
okay, forgot about the external user. In the case of a user that was created by the administrator, how can
Okay.
that user going to access the subscription? This is my question is.
The user doesn't have access to the subscription. The the
Then how can he work
administrator,
in the subscription?
how can he open the subscription? Very firstly, that's the reason I was
No,
telling.
no. How can he work in a subscription without access?
That's what I'm telling you. He doesn't have access. He will not be able to see the
Okay.
subscription. That's where we started. That's where we said the user doesn't have access to the subscription. And then later, I as an administrator went ahead and added the user into the subscription. Only then the user will get a
Okay.
subscription. Applies both for externals and internal users. No difference there.
Yeah, of course. If the administrator has finally added the user into
Mhm.
subscription, so
Okay.
how can the user access the subscription? So what
Simply
is the mode
refresh the
of
screen.
access for the user?
That's what I'm telling you, sir. If you look at this one, what is the role of accessing the subscription? It is now, let's say, let's go there. Do you agree that this is a internal user, which is demo one?
Yeah, no, I'm
If I
asking
just,
that
okay,
the user is somewhere in a different place. He's using a different system or computer. So by
yes.
what means he can access the subscription? So
By the same
with the
means,
help of the
what an
same.
owner is accessing the subscription out here. By the same means, if I'm an owner, or let's say you're
Okay.
a user, you're trying to access, let's say,
Okay.
the portal.azure.com.
Yes.
Where do you go? You
Yes.
go
Yes.
to your
Correct.
browser, type in portal.azure.com. Whatever
Yes. Yes.
email address that you got, you'll take that email address, put it in, give your password. If you give your password, you
That's
will
right.
come down to into the same tenant and into the same subscription, no matter where the user is, no matter which, let's say, part of the world the user
But
is.
you told that.
All he needs is an
But you
Mhm.
told that. But you told that in the case of user that was created by the administrator, the password will be created by the administrator himself or herself. No.
The initial password, yes, will be created by the administrator himself. Yes,
Okay. The
the
initial
initial password,
password. So by the end of the day,
yes,
by the end of the day, if you want to access the subscription, he has to create his own password.
yes, he has to. because the initial password will
Yes.
only be valid for the very first login. The very first time you're logging in, the initial password is only going to
Yeah.
be valid for that particular time. That's it.
Okay. So finally, so whatever the email that he is
Mhm.
accessing with, that same email should be reflected in the that should be the same email which was added by the administrator in the portal. The both should be I mean the both
Exactly.
emails should match for
Exactly.
the access.
That will be the same.
Yes. Yes, that's
Definitely,
it's
it
clear,
should.
sir. Thank you. Mm,
Okay.
okay.
Can we remove and or delete the users in bulk? Yes. Question. Good question. Yes, you can remove and delete the users also in bulk. Again, if you just go into your directory, you have users. I can remove individual users. I can select all these users. I can delete them at one go. Or if you click on bulk operations, you'd say bulk delete. Again, Excel file. You'll have to upload all the, let's say, data into the Excel file, upload it out, say submit. All those users will be deleted. Or if you just have so many operations out here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 users out here. I'll just say delete. I'll say okay. And the 4 users will be deleted. It says deleted successfully. Again, either creation, deletion takes a time. And all the deleted users will be under this particular blade called deleted users out here. You can restore them back for a period of 30 days. 30 days is what you get to restore them back again. Mhm. Yes. Good question is that if any employee left, then how do I delete one particular employee? So when you add, again, this is a free directory out here that we're using. When you look from organization perspective, what they say is that there is something called as conditional access. Meaning if you're an employee, normally if you're an employee, you log in every day. You basically go and log in every day. What my condition is that if you are an employee who left the organization, if you are not logging in for let's say the first 7 days, then you will be automatically deleted. Automatically deleted. That's the reason. Meaning, I'm just giving you a period called 7 days. Depending upon the organization policy, it can be 15 days or 20 days, and etc. That's the reason when you're going for a long leave, whenever you're working for such a kind of a project, your conditional access is paused for some time to tell that okay, fine, don't delete the user. I know that the user will not log in for the next 7 days or 15 days or something like that. So we have something called as conditional accesses out here. Conditional access. For that, you will have to let's say upgrade your license of Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory by default is coming with a free license for me. There is something called premium licensing. That's where you can go ahead and let's write all these things out. Okay. Okay. Yes. Permissions will come back again. Yes. Yes. Correct. The permissions will come back again. Whatever the permissions were before, the same permissions will come back again once you restore the user as well. Okay. Any more questions, guys? Okay, let's see. Okay, Naveen, I think has raised his hand. Sir, can we give a contributor for an external user? Yes, you can give a contributor a role for an okay, sir, can we give a contributor role for an external user? Okay, fine, you can give a contributor role for an external user out here. Yes, you can do that. Is again, these topics will make more sense once you practice them. Once you put them on paper, that's where you'll understand how the permissions are actually flowing. So like, try it out, try adding, try deleting it out, see how it's getting reflected, see how long it's taking to let's say reflect the user and all these things out here. Okay. Yes, any questions? Anyone? Any questions earlier?
Kiran,
Good, please.
hello.
Good,
Kiran, I
please.
have made something like called flowchart because I am getting lots of confused. Please once help me if I am missing something. So first
Okay.
we have to log in to portal.microsoft.com to get a tenant, right? Tenant ID.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Then we have to add subscriptions, right?
Correct.
And then under subscriptions, we can add users and give access to them individually or groups.
Correct. Under subscription, yes.
And
Correct.
also we can, yes, and also we can invite users, right? Through their mail ID, where they have to create their own
Correct.
password. And for the users to which we are creating, will be giving them the initial
Hmm.
password, and later on they can change it.
Correct. Later on, they can change it. Correct.
Okay. Now every user will have a different IDs, that is called that subscription ID. Every users will have a different subscription ID or same subscription ID which we are
No,
using
same subscription which we are using. Same subscription ID. Whichever user that you're
as a
creating
tenant.
under your subscription,
Tenant will have a different
yes, will.
subscription will have a different, as we are adding users and groups in the company subscription. Okay, same.
Mhm. Same subscription, yes. Subscription won't
Um,
change. It's the same subscription ID
so
where
you
you're
said
adding
that
everyone.
one ID will be different. Something. What was that?
That's called as the object ID. So if you go into the users, each and every
So
user will
what
have its
are the,
own
okay, okay,
object ID. For example,
object ID they'll be having it. Ah,
okay,
hmm.
yes, object ID will be different.
Object ID will be same or
Hello.
different.
Uh, is the email ID different for each and every user?
Yes, email ID is different. Then it will automatically
Different.
get the
So,
different IDs.
so object ID will also be different. If the
Okay.
email ID is
Now
different,
second.
object ID is different. Yes.
Hmm. Okay. Second thing is that tenant will have one ID and it will be admin. That admin can access it, right?
Tenant will have one ID, admin can access it. Partially,
Who
yes.
has the
Again, as a
authority
user,
to,
go ahead, please.
yeah, who has the authority to, limit the cost or set the budget or do any kind of changes to the users.
That would be the owner. That would be the owner or the administrator.
Yeah, that's what, like tenant, we can call it as owner or administrator, right? Who has the
No,
tenant
tenant.
login credential.
No, you cannot call tenant as the owner. Tenant is a resource in Azure.
Okay.
Under this tenant, you have multiple users, and one of the user is an owner, or multiple users are the owner who have access on the tenant and unlimited access on your subscription as well. So tenant and
Okay.
a user are different.
Okay. Tenant is
Hi,
basically
this
a
is
cloud
Naveen.
source,
Can
we
you hear
can
me?
say that.
Just a second, one at a time. Yes, can you
Yeah.
come
So
again, please?
my questions are, yeah. Yeah, I was saying that tenant is nothing but a cloud services, we can say that.
Single tenant cloud service. I would say yes. A space in the cloud. Yes,
Okay. And then under that, we can create an admin, users, and anything.
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, no
yeah.
problem.
This is Naveen. Hi.
Go ahead, Naveen.
Yeah, yeah. You said that for adding bulk users, we have to upload the data in the CSV file, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Can you show a quick something like uploading bulk something and all?
For that, I'll have to, let's say, fill the sheet completely up. For which I am running out
If you
of a
have
little bit
any
of
image
time.
or yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah, okay.
what I'll do
I-
is, like, in the next session. In the next session, I'll do the bulk user. Don't not worry about that. The next session, I'll do the
okay,
bulk
right.
user because I'll have to fill this up and then upload it, re-upload it back again. So in
Yes,
the
yes,
next session,
yes,
I'll
yes.
do that. Not a problem.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I'm running out of a time right now, guys. So the next session is going to be on Monday. We don't have a session on Saturday and Sundays out here. Next session is going to be on Monday. By Monday, please go ahead, create tenants and subscriptions under your accounts, and please revise these concepts. Again, you have the daily recording, so just go through the recordings out here, make mark down questions, and if you have any question that needs to be addressed over the weekend, send it across to me over the email and I'll reply back. Okay. Thank you, guys, and have a good day ahead.